Hi, my name is Abhijit Mone. I'm a dual qualified real estate lawyer and director at 4D Energy Advisory Limited. For over 15 years, I've advised local authorities, developers, landlords, and next-gen infrastructure companies on complex property and infrastructure transactions across the UK. My work spans smart grid deployment, airspace leasing, battery energy storage projects, local government regeneration schemes, and private, high-value landlord and tenant matters. Over the years, I've seen that the difference between a smooth transaction and a problematic one comes down to clarity, structure, and confidence in decision-making. Today, I want to share how to navigate complex property and infrastructure transactions with confidence. The first step is that in a complex transaction, whether it is a smart grid rollout across a mixed-use development or an airspace lease above a commercial building, legal documents are only one piece of the puzzle. Confidence starts with clarity. Before the heads of terms are agreed, you need to understand the commercial objectives of each party, the long-term operational implications, planning and regulatory constraints, and funding and stakeholder pressures. For example, in a smart grid deployment across a new build or a retrofit development, early misalignment between developers and energy providers can create delays that are costly and reputationally damaging. When you approach a transaction strategically, aligning legal structure with commercial intent, you avoid reactive problem-solving later on. The next step is to anticipate risk in infrastructure-heavy transactions. For example, transactions that involve BESS leases, cable easements, or airspace developments. These are inherently more complex than traditional property deals. They involve, most likely, long-term rights over land, technical operational requirements, grid connections and capacity considerations on the commercial side, and most importantly, third-party consents. The key is proactive risk identification. Typically, you would ask, what happens if the project timeline shifts? What if planning is refused or delayed? How are grid connections allocated? Are any step-in rights clearly defined? When risk allocation is addressed upfront, negotiations become more constructive. Parties feel secure because expectations are very clear. Confidence comes from knowing you've stress-tested the deal before it is signed. The next stage is to balance commercial pragmatism with legal protection. One of the most common challenges I see, especially in regeneration and public-private projects, is over-engineering legal protection to the point that it stalls commercial progress. Legal frameworks must protect your position, but they must also enable delivery. For landlord and institutional clients, that might mean structuring leases that allow flexibility for evolving energy infrastructure. For developers, it might mean negotiating cable rights or rooftop airspace leases that preserve future development value. The most effective transactions strike a balance, robust where it matters and pragmatic where it enables progress. That balance builds trust between parties and trust accelerates completion. The last bit is to surround yourself with the right advisors. Complex property transactions are rarely solved by legal expertise alone. Successful outcomes require a heavy coordination between technical engineers, planning consultants, commercial advisors, funders, and stakeholders. As a consultant solicitor working closely with infrastructure and energy specialists, I have seen firsthand how early collaboration reduces friction and avoids last-minute renegotiations. When your advisory team understands both the property framework and the infrastructure objectives, decisions are faster and more decisive. And that's where the real confidence comes from. So in conclusion, navigating complex property and infrastructure transactions isn't about eliminating risk. It's about understanding it, structuring it, and managing it strategically. Start with clarity, anticipate and allocate risk, balance protection with pragmatism, and build the right team around you. When you approach transactions in this way, complexity becomes manageable and opportunity becomes actionable. Thank you for listening.